The dress was hanging by the window, glowing in the faint light of the bedside lamp. My shoes were lined up neatly by the door. The flowers had already been delivered, the planner had triple-checked the seating chart, and my phone was buzzing non-stop with messages. "We can't wait for tomorrow. So happy for you both. You two are perfect together." Perfect. That's what everyone thought. It was the night before my wedding. I should have been sleeping, dreaming about walking down the aisle, feeling nervous butterflies about the moment my life was supposed to change forever. Instead, I was pacing the room, restless, unable to shake this heaviness in my chest. Something felt off. I told myself it was just nerves. After all, who doesn't panic the night before they commit their entire life to someone? But this wasn't just nerves. This was something deeper, something whispering that the mask of perfection we'd been wearing was about to crack. And then it did. Around midnight, I went into the guest room to grab a charger I had left in one of the bags. My maid of honor, my best friend since childhood, had left her purse on the chair. The screen of her phone lit up, a preview of a message flashing across it. I shouldn't have looked, I know that. But sometimes the truth doesn't ask permission. I froze when I saw his name, my fiancé. My hands shook as I picked up the phone, telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was about the wedding logistics, a surprise, something harmless. But curiosity and dread pulled me into unlocking it. I knew her password like I knew my own. And there it was, messages, photos, conversations that left no room for doubt. The man I was supposed to marry in less than 12 hours had been sleeping with my maid of honor. My best friend, the person I trusted most to stand beside me as I said my vows. I felt the air leave my lungs, my knees buckled, and for a moment I thought I might faint. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the phone glowing in my trembling hands, each word slicing through me like glass. "Can't wait to see you tonight, even if just for a little while. No one will ever know. She trusts us both too much. After tomorrow, we'll have to be more careful." Tomorrow. Tomorrow, I was supposed to stand in front of everyone I loved and promise him forever. Tomorrow, she was supposed to hold my bouquet, adjust my veil, whisper encouragement in my ear. The betrayal was total. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And in that moment, everything I had been ignoring, every small unease, every whisper in my soul suddenly became conscious. The late nights he couldn't explain, the way her eyes lingered a second too long, the strange tension I had brushed off as stress. I had called it fate, but really, it was the truth I didn't want to see. My body reacted before my mind could. I felt heat rising in my face, nausea rolling in my stomach. My hands went numb, my heartbeat pounded in my ears. The entire world shrank to the glow of that phone screen, to the words I could never unread. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, wake everyone up, demand answers. But instead, I sat there in silence, because in that silence, I realized I had a choice. Do I pretend I never saw this and go through with the wedding? Do I confront them now and blow everything up before the sun even rises? Or do I hold this truth close to my chest, let the night pass, and decide in the morning who I really want to be? I stayed there for what felt like hours, the weight of tomorrow pressing down on me. My hands clenched the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Finally, I set it down. I whispered to myself, "Not yet," because I knew that once I acted, once I spoke, there would be no turning back. The life everyone thought I was about to begin would end before it even started. And I needed to decide. Was I brave enough to let it end? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my body present but my mind replaying every moment of our relationship like a cruel film reel. Every kiss, every promise, every "I love you," suddenly rewritten by the truth I had uncovered. He had promised me forever. She had promised me loyalty, and both of them had lied. And so, the night before my wedding, I learned the hardest truth of all. Love built on betrayal cannot survive. What I didn't know yet was that this discovery, as devastating as it felt, wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of me finding my power. The night stretched on endlessly. Time felt elastic, like each minute was pulling me further away from the life I thought I was about to step into. Midnight bled into 1 a.m., then 2, then 3. And still I sat awake, staring at the ceiling, at the shadows dancing on the wall, at the phone I had set down but couldn't stop glancing toward, like it was a bomb waiting to go off. It wasn't just betrayal I was processing, it was the collapse of an entire world. The wedding wasn't just about us, it was about families traveling across the country, guests filling hotel rooms, vendors preparing flowers and food and music. Tomorrow wasn't just our day, it was everyone's day. And in the middle of all that expectation, I was holding a secret that could blow it all apart. At 1:30 a.m., I slipped quietly into the kitchen, hoping the cold air of the fridge would steady me. My maid of honor's purse was still on the chair. I looked at it again and felt a chill crawl up my spine. How many nights had she been sitting across from me, smiling, joking, reassuring me, while keeping this from me? The betrayal wasn't just his, it was hers too. I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window, and I asked myself, "What are you going to do?" For a moment, I imagined storming into his place that very instant, phone in hand, evidence glowing like a torch. I pictured the confrontation, the shouting, the tears, the excuses. But then I imagined the chaos that would follow. The guests, the family, the news spreading like wildfire before I'd even had the chance to decide how to handle it. And so, I stayed quiet. At 2 a.m., I pulled out my journal. The pen shook in my hand as I wrote, "He betrayed me. She betrayed me. Tomorrow is supposed to be my wedding day, and I don't know who I am anymore." The ink bled with my tears, but I kept writing, page after page. Because if I couldn't scream, I had to find another way to let it out. By 3 a.m., I called my sister. I don't even remember dialing, only the sound of her sleepy voice on the other end. At first I couldn't speak, I just sobbed, and she, half asleep, whispered, "What happened?" I told her everything, the messages, the photos, the betrayal. Silence filled the line for a long time. Then she said the words that anchored me. "You don't have to go through with this. You don't owe him or her your silence." For the first time that night, I felt less alone. We talked until nearly 4 a.m. She told me to breathe, to take 1 hour at a time. She told me she'd stand by me no matter what I decided. She told me that sometimes the bravest choice isn't holding on, it's letting go. When we hung up, I sat in the dark, holding on to her words like a lifeline. By 5 a.m., I had made a decision, not the final one, not yet, but a first step. I would confront them, not in anger, not in chaos, but with clarity. Because this wasn't just about rage, it was about reclaiming my voice. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That night, I realized how much of my life I had been living unconsciously, ignoring the signs, silencing my intuition, calling it nerves, calling it stress, calling it fate. But the truth was clear now, and clarity is power. So I sat there, watching the first light of dawn seep through the curtains, and whispered to myself, "No more silence." The longest night of my life was over. Morning was coming, and with it, the choice that would change everything. The morning of my wedding arrived like a cruel joke. The sun rose, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges, the kind of sky people call a blessing. Birds sang outside the window, and the world carried on as if nothing had happened. But inside me, Everything had changed. I hadn't slept. My eyes were swollen, my chest ached, and my body felt like it had aged 10 years overnight. Still, I moved like a machine. Shower, hair, makeup chair, as if I were following some invisible script written long before I ever saw those messages. The house buzzed with activity. Bridesmaids laughed in the kitchen. Family members rushed in and out with last-minute details. My mother dabbed at her eyes as she watched me sit in the makeup chair. To everyone else, it was just another wedding morning. To me, it was the morning I had to decide. Do I expose the truth or do I play the part? I looked at myself in the mirror as the stylist pinned my hair. My reflection stared back, pale, fragile, but behind my tired eyes there was something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Strength, because secrets rot in the dark, but once you drag them into the light, they lose their power. By 9 a.m., I asked my sister to meet me privately in the guest room. My voice shook, but I said the words out loud for the first time. I can't marry him, not after what I know. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Then we'll get through this together. That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for my dignity, I was fighting for my truth. At 10 a.m., the planner knocked, reminding me of the schedule, photos, transportation. The ceremony was set for 2 p.m. My stomach twisted. How could I walk down the aisle knowing what I knew? I made my choice. Before the ceremony, I would confront him. Around 11 a.m., I asked to see him. It was unusual. Tradition says the bride and groom shouldn't meet before the ceremony, but no one questioned me. They thought I wanted a quiet, romantic moment. In reality, I was preparing for war. We met in a small side room at the venue. The dress not yet on me, just a robe, my hair half done. He walked in smiling, his eyes lighting up the way they always did when he saw me. For a split second, I wanted to believe in that smile again. But then I remembered the words on her phone. I pulled out my own phone, opened the photos I had saved, and handed it to him. Explain this. His face drained of color. His hands shook as he scrolled through the evidence. I watched the mask slip. Shock, denial, panic. He stammered, "It's not what it looks like." But I cut him off. Don't insult me with lies. You had your chance to tell me the truth. I found it for myself." He dropped onto the chair, burying his face in his hands. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally he whispered, "It was a mistake." A mistake. My voice trembled, but it was steady enough. A mistake doesn't happen over and over. A mistake doesn't send messages at midnight. A mistake doesn't sit beside me planning my wedding while sleeping with my best friend. His eyes lifted, desperate. "I still want to marry you. We can get past this." I stared at him, stunned by the audacity. But then I realized, of course he would say that. For him, love was about convenience. For me, love was about truth. And this wasn't truth. I stood, my hands shaking but my voice clear. "The wedding is off." At that exact moment, the door opened. My maid of honor, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. She must have sensed what was happening. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." Sorry. The word echoed like poison in the air. I looked at both of them, the man who promised me forever, the woman who promised me loyalty, and I felt nothing but clarity. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And in that moment I was transformed, because the reaction to their betrayal wasn't my destruction, it was my awakening. I left them there, in that small room, their apologies hanging in the air like smoke. By noon I gathered my family and closest friends. My voice trembled, but I told them the truth. Gasps, tears, anger, all of it filled the room. But beneath it all there was something else. Support. I wasn't alone anymore. The ceremony that was supposed to begin at 2 p.m. would not happen, not as planned, but something else would. Because if this was supposed to be the day I began a new life, then I would still honor that. Only this time, I wouldn't be marrying him. I would be choosing me. The hours between noon and 2 o'clock felt like a storm gathering on the horizon. Guests were arriving, smiles on their faces, phones in hand, ready to capture what they thought would be a perfect day. They didn't know the truth that was already reshaping everything. I sat in a quiet room, the dress hanging beside me, untouched. My mother sat across from me, her eyes full of both pain and pride. My sister held my hand like she was anchoring me to the earth. I whispered, "What am I supposed to do? Everyone's here, everything's set. If I cancel now, it'll be chaos." My sister squeezed my hand tighter. "If you walk down that aisle knowing what you know, the chaos won't just be today. It'll be your entire life." Her words settled deep in me. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And that day, I realized I had to choose. Not him, not her, not the fantasy of a perfect wedding. I had to choose me. By 1:30 p.m., I asked to speak to the officiant privately. He was a kind man, wise beyond his years. I told him everything. The betrayal, the decision, the need to speak my truth. His eyes softened. He nodded slowly. "This is your ceremony. You decide what story is told here today." And so I made a choice. I wouldn't hide. I wouldn't let whispers and rumors carry my truth through the crowd like wildfire. I would speak it myself. At 2 p.m., the music began. Guests rose, turning toward the aisle, expecting me to appear in my gown. But instead, I walked out in a simple white dress, not the one I had chosen for him, but one I chose for myself in that very moment. No veil, no bouquet, just me. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Confusion, curiosity. I walked to the front, the officiant by my side. He handed me the microphone, and the room fell silent. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. "This was supposed to be my wedding day," I began. "A day to celebrate love, trust, and forever. But last night, I learned a truth that changed everything. The man I was meant to marry and the woman I trusted most betrayed me." Gasps, shock. Eyes widened, hands covering mouths. I continued, my voice breaking but strong. "I won't be walking down this aisle today. Not to him. Because vows mean nothing without truth. Love means nothing without loyalty. And I refused to begin my forever with a lie." The silence was heavy. Some cried, some looked furious on my behalf. Others looked stunned, unsure how to process the unraveling of what they thought was perfect. Then I said the words that set me free. "But I will not leave here broken. I will not leave here ashamed, because today I am still choosing love. I'm choosing to marry the only person who has never betrayed me, the only person who has carried me through every storm, myself." A collective breath swept through the room. I choose me, and I promise to never abandon myself again. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt powerful. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And in that moment, in front of everyone, I became her. The guests rose in applause. Not polite, not pitying, real applause. A standing ovation for truth, for courage, for authenticity. And while he sat there, pale and silent, and she stared at the floor, I walked away, not with shame, but with pride. The reveal wasn't about humiliating them. It was about reclaiming me, and that's exactly what I did. The ceremony ended not with vows, but with truth. I walked out of that venue feeling both shattered and whole at the same time. Shattered because everything I thought I had, every plan, every dream, every promise was gone. Whole because for the first time in a long time, I had chosen myself. The hours that followed were chaos. Guests swarmed, some crying, some furious on my behalf, others whispering in shock. My phone lit up with messages, sympathy, outrage, confusion. Vendors approached me with questions about payments, cancellations, logistics. My mother wept quietly, but hugged me tighter than she ever had before. My sister stood beside me like a shield, answering questions I couldn't. And him? He vanished, slipped out the side door with his family, avoiding eye contact, avoiding responsibility. Her too. My so-called best friend disappeared without a word, leaving behind her dress, her bouquet, and the wreckage of our friendship. By nightfall, I was back in my room, the wedding dress still hanging by the window, untouched. I sat on the floor, still in the simple white dress I had chosen to wear, staring at the silence. I thought the grief would drown me, but instead, something else filled the room. Peace. Because no matter how painful the day had been, I knew I had done the right thing. Carl Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." And that day, I communicated the most important truth of all. I would not betray myself to protect an illusion. The days that followed were messy. Calls from relatives, refunds to process, deposits lost. The gossip spread, but so did the admiration. Messages poured in from people I hadn't spoken to in years. "You're so brave. I wish I had done what you did." You reminded me that self-respect matters more than appearances. I wasn't just healing myself, I was becoming a mirror for others. 1 week later, I took off the ring and placed it in a box. Not with bitterness, but with finality. It was no longer a symbol of love. It was a lesson. 2 weeks later, I sat in a cafe journaling when I realized something profound. I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore, because being alone after betrayal was better than being together in a lie. A month later, I planned a trip. Not a honeymoon, but a journey for myself. I visited places I had always wanted to see, places I had shelved in the name of compromise. I walked through streets in cities I'd never been, tasted food I'd never tried, laughed with strangers who had no idea of my story. And in every step, I felt lighter, stronger. I realized I hadn't lost a wedding. I had reclaimed a life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment when you thought your life was falling apart, but later realized it was falling into place? That's what this was for me. Because in losing him, I found myself. In losing her, I found truth. In losing the wedding, I found freedom. So yes, the night before my wedding, everything changed. But now, when I look back, I don't see tragedy. I see transformation. And if you're listening to this, holding on to something or someone that is costing you your peace, I want you to remember this. You don't have to wait until the night before the wedding to choose yourself. You can choose yourself right now. Because real love, whether it's with another person or within yourself, never asks you to betray your soul. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a moment when choosing yourself meant losing everything else? Subscribe if this story resonated with you, because here we tell the truth about heartbreak, healing, and rebirth. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you'll ever do. And I'll leave you with Jung's words one last time. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. On the night before my wedding, I thought I had lost everything. But in truth, I had finally begun to become who I was meant to be.